And what I would like to make a comment on is the cost associated with these. We typically, we being a public, we tend to think about pollution reduction as something that's going to cost us as taxpayers, that it's always a one-way street, that it just means if we have to reduce X amount of phosphorus from entering a given lake, it's going to cost us X amount of money to do that. I think we have to start thinking about how this is not always a one-way street. There are actually a lot of BMPs that we could adopt, implement in a particular setting, and actually maybe in a short term spend some money, but in the long term actually realize some tremendous economic benefits. And I'll just give one example that comes from my area in central Pennsylvania. There's been this perception that nutrient management is a particular best BMP that's gaining a lot of acceptance in agricultural circles. What that basically means is that we try to reduce the amount of nutrients that we put on the landscape, particularly in agricultural areas, so that we can reduce the amount of nitrogen and phosphorus that's transported to a given to a nearby water body. And that usually means you have to cut back on the amount of manure or fertilizer you use. And to farmers, this has always been somewhat worrisome because, as we all know, that's a very marginal occupation to be engaged in, and even probably more so now. And so typically, as probably most people would be if they were farming, they would try to ensure that they got a good crop the next season. This typically means over-applying fertilizer and manure, because the benefits of over-applying in economic terms is far different than what you would get if you under-apply. It's a drastic difference in crop production. And so farmers tend to over-apply. Now, nitrogen is typically the nutrient that most farmers are interested in. What usually results is that when you over-apply a little bit of nitrogen, you almost double the amount of phosphorus that you really need to grow any given crop. So that's resulted in supersaturation of many agricultural soils. Now, an easy fix, at least to my mind and the mind of many others, to solving that dilemma is getting a good handle on what the nutrient level is in the soil. In Pennsylvania, we've adopted soil testing, and it's free. There's a soil test lab at the state capitol. Actually, there's one at Penn State. Farmers from all over the state send soil samples in at different locations within their farm to get a sense of what is the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium levels in their soils. If they don't need to apply as much as they typically have, they might reduce their fertilizer application by 50% and still have more than they need to result in a good crop. This is an economic savings to them. It's an environmental benefit to the public at large, and it's a win-win situation. That's just one example of a BMP actually not being an economic burden.